Normally on the Knife and Fork Show, we focus on regulations related to human food. But there's an issue brewing that's very interesting, and it involves pet food, or at least in this case, pet jerky treats. And who do we care more about anyhow? People? Or those little furry winged or even scaled creatures who count on us to help feed them and take care of them? Well, I guess it depends on which people or pets we're talking about. Hello, I'm Jason Huffman, Editor-in-Chief of Food Chemical News. Welcome to the Knife and Fork Show. In late September, the FDA Center for Veterinary Medicine announced that it was going to begin testing jerky pet treats from China for radiation byproducts. This was just the latest development in an ongoing investigation over illness complaints related to about 2,200 pets dating back to 2007. But this story may involve human food too, at least indirectly. It is believed that unsuccessful efforts by the meat and poultry industry to get permission that would allow poultry processed in China to be shipped to the United States may be one of the reasons why these types of pet food products are now flowing into the US from China at record numbers. Here to talk about the issue is the guy who has caused them so much trouble that the USDA recently suggested he move to Canada. Tony Corbo, Senior Food Policy Analyst for the consumer advocacy group Food and Water Watch, and also our reporter of Many Beats, Amber Healy. Tony, I'm counting on you to tell the story here. Take us back to what happened, where this started, and how we got here.
Well, Food and Water Watch became interested in a proposed rule that USDA published in the Federal Register in November of 2005 that would allow processed poultry products from China to come to the United States. We opposed the rule because based on the data that USDA provided to back up the rule, we found that the Chinese food safety system really was not equivalent to that of the United States.
This was back in
2005. And
okay.
Yeah, and so January 2006, the comment period closed, and the rule lay dormant until all of a sudden I noticed in the on the Office of Management Budget website, the reviews where they review major rules from agencies, that on March the 18th, USDA sent this final rule to the White House for review. Now, normally it takes 90 days to review a major rule. Well, lo and behold, on March the 19th, 2006, the rule clears OMB. And then the very next day, March the 20th, then President Hu Jintao from China visited President Bush. And President Bush presented this final rule as on a silver platter to the President Hu Jintao. Well, the way the final rule was structured was that China could export processed poultry products to the United States provided that the raw poultry came from an approved source. And at that time, the only two approved sources was poultry from either the United States or Canada. So in other words, North American chicken could be shipped to China, raw carcasses, that the Chinese could cook it and then send it back to us, as ridiculous as that sounds. But that's the way the rule was structured.
Sounds very costly, but as it turns out, it's actually very cost effective, isn't it?
It is. I mean, because of the labor costs in China, it probably would be cost effective. The proposed rule at the time also said that they only anticipated about 2.5 million pounds of processed poultry to come from China. Well, the Chinese weren't really interested in that. They really wanted the whole shebang. They wanted to be able to ship their own poultry. So they never certified plants in China to ship poultry products to the United States because they were waiting for the ability to send their own poultry to the United States. At the time, there were concerns about avian influenza in China. There were outbreaks in the flocks there. Plus, USDA found that the slaughter facilities in China really did not meet our
Right.
food
They
safety
actually sent the inspectors over there to check them out.
Right.
They?
So yeah, USDA and there were concerns. So but Congress started to get a little concerned about this, and actually in the 2008 and 2009 appropriations bills for USDA, there was a provision put in that prohibited USDA from proceeding with any poultry imports from China. China then turned around and
You're like an encyclopedia with this stuff.
so in 2010, China challenged us before the World Trade Organization successfully, and the process restarted. And so as part of my regular communications with USDA, I would ask them, okay, what's the status of the poultry products rule from China? And they said for some reason the Chinese are not communicating with us. So in July, when I asked this question for like the 10th time, I got back to the office and all of a sudden I noticed this alert from the Food and Drug Administration advising consumers against feeding their pets chicken jerky treats from China. So I said, how can this happen? I thought there wasn't supposed to be any poultry coming in from China. So lo and behold.
This was when again?
In July of this year.
Okay.
July 2012. So so when I looked at that alert from FDA, I realized we were importing poultry products. They were being fed to our pets, and apparently there were reports that pets were getting ill here in this country. Some of them were dying, and so I asked our research department to take a look at how much pet food we were importing from China. And lo and behold, between 2003, when China first requested that they be able to ship poultry to the United States for human consumption, and 2011, there was an 86-fold increase in the amount of imports of pet food from China. So we went from 1 million pounds to 86 million pounds. And so because there was some congressional pressure put on FDA, both Congressman Kucinich from Ohio and Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio urged that the FDA inspect those poultry facilities, those pet treat facilities in China.
They made that trip just a couple months ago.
Well, they made it actually in April.
Oh, okay.
And but the results of those inspections were not released until September. And lo and behold, the Chinese did not have adequate record keeping in a lot of these plants. Mm-hmm. They would not. The folks who were responsible for some of the irradiation that was going on, because that was one of the things that these pet treats were treated with was irradiation. Those folks who were responsible for the irradiation treatment weren't anywhere to be found. And when FDA wanted to conduct independent tests of these products, the Chinese refused.
Right.
And so
they said we'll look at them and give you the results.
Yeah, we'll do the sampling, we'll do the testing, and then we'll give you the results, which kind of infuriated me because of the fact that we think that was cause for the FDA to say, fine, you're not going to allow us to complete our inspection, then we're not going to allow any imports of these treats from China. But FDA did not do that.
Yeah, the products are still coming in.
And the products are still coming in.
A couple examples of those products at the grocery store today.
Right. And so in September, when FDA finally released the results of those inspection reports, they also finally fessed up that 360 dogs and 1 cat and 2,200 dog illnesses have been reported to the FDA, and they seem to be traced back to these chicken jerky treats imported from China. And so there have been, we've urged the FDA to take action. There are a number of consumers who've asked some of the major retailers like Walmart, Target, Walgreens that carry these chicken jerky treats to take them off the shelves, and so far nobody's doing anything.
They're not even pulling from the shelves.
And they're not being pulled from the shelves.
What do you expect to happen next? What do you expect to hear next?
Well, I know that some of the consumer groups are some of the pet food advocates are trying to continue the pressure on the retailers. But one of the things that is also kind of frustrating is the fact that you have two regulations, proposed regulations, as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act that was signed into law in 2011. One that would set up food safety standards for pet food, and the other one that would require importers to be held accountable for the safety of the products that they bring into the country. Those rules have not left the White House, and they've already missed the statutory deadlines for the implementation of those rules. We're not even at the proposed rules stage yet. So those would be very helpful in terms of trying to regulate this industry. But the fact of the matter is, we produce a lot of chicken in this country. Why some of our major pet food manufacturers are going abroad to source their products is beyond me.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks to Tony Corbo for joining us twice on the Knife and Fork Show. And thanks to Amber Healy for returning again. See you at work on Monday. Given the nature of this particular show, this is a good time just to remind you, our viewers, that the opinions expressed here of our guests in particular are not necessarily the views of Food Chemical News. We are an independent source of information. We talk to industry, regulatory officials, and consumer advocates. We see our job as being here to inform. We never want to get caught sounding like we are taking sides one way or the other on these issues, which can often be very polarizing. We want to hear from all sides. And we're working now to get someone from the pet food industry on the show. That's your invitation, Pet Food Institute, or anybody else who wants to come on and talk about this. Thanks. See you again soon.